And we're live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talking About Survivor. I am Christiana Ellis.
I'm Mike Mateen.
Tonight we're going to talk about Season 33, Episode 9. We're getting in there. We're solidly, into second, the back end of the season. No, I'm confusing a lot of terms. I think I was generally talking about like how baseball is the top of one inning and the bottom of the next, but then the bottom of the season didn't sound right. So whatever. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? We're past the halfway mark. And there's still a lot of interesting players going around. We lost a player that caused interesting things to happen. Even if I think that he himself was not necessarily like he caused interesting things to happen mostly by doing things that no good player would do and therefore being unpredictable.
Right.
So if we just jump right to the beginning, as we start off coming back, we of course have Jay and Taylor and Will having now been made to understand that they are not the majority they thought they were. And then Jay especially is really frustrated because he feels that the millennials that crossed over to make that vote happen are setting themselves up for failure because once they're basically setting themselves up to get picked off by the remaining Gen Xers once the numbers shift back that direction. Yeah. So in the meantime, we also have Chris happy to have picked up some traction.
Yep.
I tend to think that it's not as big a thing as Jay was thinking it was, because it was really his belief that the millennials were as strong as they were that kind of led him to be blindsided in the way that he was. Like not in terms of being voted out, but in terms of being surprised that there was a split in that way. So I think, he thinks that it's still millennials and Gen Xers, and now these millennial traders are going to get picked off when it returns to that dynamic. But my impression is that that's kind of an over dynamic.
Yes, I agree. I think that dynamic is gone. I think they are integrating themselves into one unit at this point.
Yeah, especially as we get to, the individual phase of the game where each individual player really has nothing to gain from sticking to old allegiances.
Right.
So Jay and Taylor, in their sour grapes commiserating, are laughing that the others trusted Adam, as though they shouldn't have. And while that's perhaps debatable, it's also kind of like, you guys realize you were going to vote for him, right? You did vote for him. If he hadn't gone over to that side, he would have gone home. So, of course he would. And the others see you as a threat. So, I'm not sure why they were dumb for doing what they did.
Right.
They see you as more of a threat than him, so they used him to vote out one of you. That's not dumb on their part. They don't have to trust Adam.
Right. And I think they definitely overplayed like this whole the mistrust of Adam is going to advance us.
Yeah.
Since that seemed to be their whole plan going into Tribal.
Well, I think they didn't have anything else. I think they had to rely on that just because it was too clear cut otherwise. They really had nothing else to lean on. But I tend to agree that, especially with Taylor's insistence that somehow his leverage is bigger than Adam's on him, I weirdly felt like he's right, but not for the reason he thinks. Because in my opinion, stealing the food is a way bigger and worse thing than having the advantage. But Adam is almost more in trouble for just not telling anybody. For agreeing to keep your secret is a bigger deal than him having his own secret.
Right.
But that still ultimately means that you are the primary responsible party there. So even if it looks bad on him, it's still worse on you.
Yes.
It's so I think, though, that there was just some wishful thinking there, because they just really had nothing else. It was made very clear to them that, even if there were still a few people like Hannah and Zeke willing to at least have conversations with them, that they were on the outs now, and there didn't seem to be any coming back.
Right. I think the other piece of why Adam's thing was a bigger deal than his is that most people already knew that he took food. They just didn't know at the level
that he had actually taken a lot more than anybody thought and hidden it in
right.
a cache.
Right. So it was just like a degree of something that he had already done, whereas Adam's was a new thing. So I think because of both of those reasons, he was right, but not for what he thought. Yeah.
Well, see, the biggest problem with his whole argument was that he was basically saying Adam has this thing that might allow him to do something that you wouldn't like. But it's like he could also just not do that. Like he hasn't done anything yet. Like the possibility that he could do something is not really on the same magnitude. Besides, it's just kind of like saying what? He found a thing and therefore that's a reason to vote him out? Now, I mean, I suppose if they wanted to just eliminate that as a possibility, that's not outside the realm, but it's certainly not as big a deal as any of the rest of that stuff, in my opinion.
I think it was more of the fact that they thought that he had a secret was going to make people distrust him more, because that their whole argument was predicated on you shouldn't trust Adam.
Right.
Because
except they already don't, though. That's the thing.
Right. But those two don't trust Adam way more than other people, because they're still mad. It's still just like a revenge thing for them.
Yeah.
Whereas other people, they don't trust him a ton because he's kind of weird acting, but they don't have nearly the passion for it that those guys have.
Yeah. Well, it was funny because when we first had Adam talking to them after the tribal council, I thought at first that Adam was still trying to be on their side somehow. And I'm just like, what, really? But then it was kind of more clear as the conversation progressed that it's really more of a they're trying to make it sound like he betrayed them. And he's like, you guys were going to vote for me. You did vote for me. If I hadn't done what I did, I would have gone home. I don't have to apologize for that. I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
It's like, because I told you, Jay, something in confidence that you didn't like, so you agreed with it to my face and then went behind my back to tell someone else and then decided to target me. You don't get to be mad that I then went against your plan. But so I was glad that he kind of stood up for himself a little bit there, just because up till now, his whole strategy has been basically to say, yep, I screwed you over, but we're still friends, right? Though I'm giving you no reason for you to trust me or like me or do anything for me, but you will anyway, right? So anyway, So there's just the discussion of like whose secret is bigger, and Taylor kind of revealing just how much he stole, which was more than I think I had previously realized, or at least he describes it as like half the food and nobody noticed.
He's pretty good with mason jars, so
yeah, clearly. Except he's not good enough to realize that if you put the pretzels in the same jar with all the fruit, they'll get soggy.
Correct.
See, that's a rookie mistake, Taylor. You should have known better with all of your experience. So we have in the morning, Jay is thinking he needs to try to find a way out of the hole that he's in. He talks with Hannah, and it's like a productive conversation, at least in the sense that he's kind of seems to be connecting with her in a straightforward way, just because she doesn't really have any other mode. But it's also not promising in the way of giving him hope that he can change the outcome. She basically kind of explains herself, and it's reasonable, and he can understand why she's where she's at. And she's basically saying, look, it's not that I don't like you. I just felt like this was better for me. You know, if it starts seeming like it'll be better for me to do something else, then maybe I'll do that. But that's not what it seems like right now.
Yeah.
Although
he was pretty straightforward with him.
Yeah. I will say though that in her confessional, she's power tripping a little bit. I think the appeal of this idea that she can control the outcome by doing, changing her position. She's maybe a little bit addicted to that. She liked the feeling of doing that.
Yeah.
But, other than just talking about liking it, we haven't really seen her translate that into any kind of, unreasonable move that is a mistake. So it could be that it's just, she's got that still under wraps. So with the discussion of Adam's advantage, we go into the reward trip wondering, if anything's going to come of it. The reward is going to be a resort trip with burgers and cocktails, soft drinks for Will. I made a point of saying that like 3 different times in the episode, that anytime there's alcohol, he doesn't get any.
Yeah, I don't know if they felt like they needed to do that, or like it just felt like Jeff Probst thought that was funny, and it just kept milking his own joke.
Yeah. It could be. I sort of assumed that it was more on the lines of maybe from past experience, they knew that people with opinions write in and complain about stuff like that unless they make it really explicit.
Potential. Yeah.
So in any case, the two they're split into 2 groups, and one group is considerably stronger and better at this challenge than the other. And I was amused by the brief aside over to Hannah as the losing team's captain, where she's just going like, well, guess I'm not going to be a sports team captain. Or something to that effect. It's just basically realizing, I guess I didn't pick very well. I let them get all the strongest athletic people. And she sure did too, because it's Taylor, Brett, Chris, and Ken all on that same tribe. So, or same team for the challenge.
Yeah, I mean, they were very lopsided teams for this kind of challenge.
Yeah.
As was evident.
Yeah, it was.
Result.
Probst described it as a blowout, which is, I guess if you're considering the score to be the number of like little bolos you'd done, because they the winning team did win before they even really got to throwing them.
They never got out of the net.
Yeah.
So,
so I don't know about you, but what I was really wanting was for Adam to go ahead and just use his advantage to steal this reward from Taylor.
I didn't even actually think about that.
Just because, like, Taylor is already on the outs, so I don't think anyone would have been that mad about it. And then where does Taylor's leverage go? But I think Adam made some really dumb mistakes related to that advantage in this episode, mostly at the tribal council, but I wonder if it's because he really was actually 100% planning to save it for the loved one reward and use it at that time if he doesn't, win it naturally, because otherwise I don't know what he's saving it for, unless he's just sort of waiting to get a reward he likes better.
Well, I was thinking maybe he's waiting to see if there's an immunity challenge advantage.
Well, that's true. I guess we did talk about that last time, this idea that that would be something worth stealing.
Right. Yeah, so I couldn't figure out if the loved ones thing was just something that Taylor created because he thought that would rile up everybody, or if Adam had actually talked about that being something that he would use it for.
Maybe. I got the impression that it's really just because it creates the sort of most emotionally agitating image, the idea that
right, like Taylor
you won the challenge and he's going to steal your loved one visit from you. Like that idea.
That's what I thought, was that Taylor had sort of just concocted that because it made the most sense.
Right. I guess my only the reason that I guess the mistake that I'm talking about primarily with is in the tribal council, where when Taylor, paints this picture, all of a sudden Adam's defense is, well, but it's an advantage that doesn't really affect the game. And I'm like, what?
That's a weird way of putting it.
Yeah, because it like just immediately, like, even if people were already rolling their eyes at Taylor, like saying that just kind of puts them back on Taylor's side of like, wait, what? No, you could steal a good reward.
Yeah.
And like the spirit boost that you could get from a loved one could definitely have an effect on the game. Like, there's all sorts of things you could do with that do affect the game. Like, that's not a good... Like, the right answer was, I haven't done anything yet. I just found a thing.
Right. Yeah, to say it doesn't affect the game is a terrible defense, because, like you said, it could affect the game. If he stole an advantage and an immunity, that affects the game.
Yeah.
If he used it to put a group of people together that then was able to partner up to change voting, then that affects the game. If he was able to feed himself when he was otherwise going to be weak, and that gives him renewed spirit, that affects the game. He takes a loved one, that affects the game. Plus the residual action of him doing that and what it causes to the tribe affects the game. Like, literally every way that he uses this thing affects the game. Unless he had taken Taylor's reward this time.
He could have easily just flipped it to say, hypothetically, let's say in this next couple of days, there's one remaining person that we feel like we want to get that person out, and we want to make sure they don't get any stronger. And so maybe we want to steal the reward from them in order to keep them weaker so we can vote them out. Someone like, say, Jay or Taylor, whoever's left after tonight. Like, he could have pitched it like as like there's all sorts of other ways that it could be used that don't have to be about him stealing someone's loved one visit from them.
Right.
Not that he necessarily plans to do it that way, but like once it's a potential target on his back, there was much better ways that he could have handled that. I feel like his answer was 100% counterproductive. Like, at minimum, what he should have just said is, yes, I found a thing. I have not used it for anything yet. What's wrong with that? You know, it's like you want to turn on me because I have a thing I might use instead of someone who has admitted to stealing all our food.
Right. And how many of you may have found an immunity idol that you haven't admitted to us?
Yeah.
You know, like, it's not.
Yeah. So anyway, it was kind of bizarre that
He's not handled it well.
Yeah. So I feel like Taylor's antics should not have worked as well as they did, and they only did because Adam was defending himself so poorly.
Right.
But so in any case, we get to the reward, and we have see, this ties back into a discussion we had earlier in the season where Chris makes a big deal about how Brett was all in with the alcohol, 8 or 9 drinks, and we see him acting, you know, a little loose. You know, he's, exuberant, but like, that's it. So kind of, I feel like, other than just throwing in that line about, oh, he had a lot of drinks, like, nothing else happens with that. So, I mean, I'm not saying they shouldn't tell us, but they kind of made it like it was going to be a thing, and then it was nothing.
Right.
But so while at the reward there, we hear from Sunday, who her assessment of this whole situation is that within the Gen X remainder, Jessica and Dave are the ones that are kind of on the bottom and the least trusted within that group. And I suspect that that's maybe at least partly true, but I also very much got the impression that Sunday kind of places herself higher on the totem pole than I would if I was ranking it.
Yes.
Especially since she's kind of thinking it's time for her to try to take control of the game.
Yeah, I'm not sure how she expects to do that. Like, I mean, I don't, like you said, I think she just feels that she's in a different position than I feel like she's in.
Yeah. Well, her attempt to take control of the game seems to basically involve having an idea that's not feasible, realizing it's not feasible, and therefore not doing anything.
Right. Yes.
So, I mean, I guess that's better than not even thinking about it. So you can give her that credit at least. It's also probably better than trying to push really hard on a plan that's not feasible. So, recognition that now is not the time for her to make her move is not necessarily something to criticize her for. But it also sort of seems clear that she's kind of thinking of herself as a more active, involved player than we have seen demonstrated so far.
Yes, agreed.
My actual note when she said that was, okay. Anyway, back at the the camp with everybody else, we have Jay, who's doing whatever he can, which includes even trying to pitch to Adam again. Of like, it's kind of funny to have sort of the shoe on the other foot here now, right? With him sort of humbled enough to realize, gosh, maybe Adam's the only one that even seems squirrely enough to consider doing anything with us. Yep. And Adam is basically, at this point, I think, he has stood up for himself once and lightning didn't strike. So he's all in for that now, basically making it clear, nope. You guys are out. You're on your way out. It's definitely going to be you or Taylor. That's it. And kind of being a jerk about it, according to Jay. How much of a jerk he's being objectively might be different. From Jay's perspective, though, who is getting shut down, he says being a jerk. Although it seems like Hannah and Zeke, when told about it, how much they're kind of humoring Jay is one thing, but they've expressed irritation with Adam in the past, and so Zeke's frustration seems less related to being a jerk to Jay and more like, Adam, what are you doing? Like, yes, they're on the bottom. Yes, they're going to go, but you don't rub it in their faces like that because that's what destabilizes the situation.
Yes.
So,
yeah, Zeke's frustration is not that he can't trust Adam. It's just he's sort of, and not even erratic. Like he's not really a team player. Yeah. I do not find Adam long for the game, honestly.
No, I
mean, maybe because people think they can beat him.
Yeah.
Since he's sort of but at some point, like, people are not going to even want to work with him, even if they think they can beat him, because he says stuff like that. Like, he messes up plans because he's sort of, like I said, I can't think of a better word than erratic, but it's kind of, he's
a loose cannon.
Yeah, he's kind of a loose cannon in the fact, like, you just can't trust what he's going to go and do and rile up without meaning to, you know? Like,
right.
He's not a known quantity. Like, whatever he's doing on his own, not that you can control what anybody's doing, but he's less trustworthy in that sense. Not that he's being deliberately dishonest with you. It's just that you can't trust him to behave a certain way.
Yeah, you can't trust him to accomplish what he's trying to do. So, like,
right.
Even if he's sincere about wanting to be on your side and help you out and accomplish the same mutual goal, you can't trust him to get it done or to behave in a way that's likely to produce that result.
Right.
So it's not, treachery. It's just incompetence.
It's kind of a good way to put it, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we had that. We have kind of a nice, beautiful sunrise where they kind of make a point of, this is day 25, and everyone's kind of watching the sunrise. I can't help but feel like that this episode felt just a teensy bit padded. Like there was stuff in this episode that would not have been in another busier episode.
I mean, just feel like that even just in our conversation. I mean, which sort of, yeah, this is what happened. Here's a little bit of our thought, and then on we move. Like we're moving fairly quickly through it just in our discussion. So even with, like, I think that's proving out that it wasn't super substantive in the fact that just not a lot of interesting things happened. Like Jay and Taylor were on the bottom. Adam kind of acted weird, and
that was really the extent of it. Taylor and Jay knew it was going to be one of them. They knew the votes were going to be split. Everybody had their mind pretty much made up, and they scrambled and tried something, and it didn't work, and that was it.
Yep.
That's the story of this episode. I think we can at least. I do like at least that we get more from Sunday in this one, just because I feel like we haven't even had a confessional from her for weeks.
Yeah.
So having her kind of show up again as someone still actively thinking about the game and not just coasting, I did appreciate that, even if she hasn't really done anything to be impressed by so far. So in this case, though, she's got her sights set on Jessica for reasons that are not entirely logical, I don't think, but maybe just Jessica seems like more of a threat, maybe, and just the fact that maybe they don't quite get along or thinks Jessica is not trustworthy. That's maybe enough, but I think there's also just an element of, if she's been thinking about stuff but playing, an under the radar game, she might just be getting hungry for some sort of an action to take.
Yeah.
So she kind of approaches Jay to mention this idea, which honestly, I don't know. I mean, ultimately, I think approaching Jay doesn't doesn't get her what she wants, because he can't do it on his own, right? He's already desperate. So he might be willing to sign on, but you need your other numbers before you get him.
Yeah, exactly. You need to have the rest of it set up and then just say, all right, Jay, we've got you an out.
Yeah.
But if you go to him and say, hey, would you like to not have you or Taylor voted off this time? And he goes, yeah, I'm in for that. Okay, well, let me go work on that. Okay.
Because all that she really did this time is give Jay the opportunity to show up to tribal council and say, hey, Jessica, you know what Sunday came and told me? She was pushing really hard to try to get you out. And he didn't do that, I think, because I think Jay figured out that it was, or at least he was riding the gamble that it was going to be Taylor to go. And so he didn't necessarily want to burn that this time if he can just ride it out, keep his idol, and keep that information in his pocket.
He definitely knew because he voted for Taylor.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure Taylor voted.
No, Taylor voted for Adam.
Well, then Taylor's stupid. So, I mean, Taylor, we kind of knew that. But,
yeah.
But it was obvious that Jay was throwing Taylor under the bus during the tribal council, though. I didn't think that was a surprise. I think he had concluded early on that it was going to be him or Taylor. He was not in with Taylor's whole thing to try to get it on Adam. He was maybe trying to sow some seeds, but he definitely tried to pitch this whole thing of like, well, I didn't approve of stealing the food, and if I had been, in Adam's position of seeing you bury it, I would have said something. And that kind of rings a little hollow because, as Adam points out, it's like, but you ate a bunch. And what was kind of funny is that Jay tries to say he only ate crumbs. Adam tries to say he didn't eat any. And we both know that they're both lying. We know that they're both lying.
I know. Well, also, Jay didn't want to have to use his idol. So once he kind of had the lay of the land, he knew he needed to vote for Taylor. Because if the votes were split in a way where they were heavier towards him, he would then balance that out.
Yeah.
And they would tie. I
definitely think that Jay probably let Taylor think that he was in on this plan of we're going to try to shift it to Adam, but probably did not believe that was going to work. Certainly not as the tribal council progressed, and therefore, so I think that Jay was much more mercenary in his approach to that than Taylor was. Taylor seems kind of
smarter than Taylor.
Yeah. Taylor was just kind of oblivious and really just kind of like with the whole stealing food thing, seems to just really have this attitude that Probst keeps wanting to call millennial of, well, I get to just do whatever I want and things work out, right?
No.
So, turns out, no. Yeah. That's not how it works. But so in any case, we go to the immunity challenge with Jay pretty convinced that he needs to try to win. And then this is one of the ones where it's difficult to stay up, but not necessarily pain-inducing in the way that some of them are.
Yeah.
But they're given the opportunity to just sit out the challenge from the beginning, rather than like the mid-challenge temptation. And Zeke and Will decide to sit out, and then Brett comes to regret not sitting out. I will often criticize people for sitting out, but this is one where I sort of feel like, I wonder if I'm biased by just liking Zeke generally, but the idea of just saying, yeah, I'm not going to be able to do that. So I know that I won't win this one. So I'll just eat rather than end up the way Brett did, which is to not take the food, go out early anyway, and then have to just sit there watching other people eat.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky balance into where you stand in the game, because even if you can't win it, it could frustrate others if you don't even try.
Right.
He was in a position where he has enough clout with people, like, you know, they like him enough and he's trustworthy enough that he can just say, like, I can't do this, so I'm just going to eat. You know?
Yeah. Will has less of that excuse, I think, partly just because, you know, I feel like he might have had a better chance than he was sort of giving himself credit for. But also, he is definitely in the minority that's being targeted this time. Even if everyone's pretty sure it's between Taylor and Jay, you know, he's next on that list.
Yeah, he was potentially the target last time and felt to the fact that he was telling everybody that he had to win immunity so he didn't get voted out.
Yeah.
Only a few days before.
Yeah.
And now he's good.
Yeah, so it's one thing to be of the opinion that you are not going to win anyway, but then it's also kind of like, well, what other factors might be playing into your assessment there? Is it maybe that you're hungry? And yeah, but in any case, Hannah goes out first. Brett goes out. We get some blurry mouth swearing that he should have sat out. It comes down to the final four of Jay, Adam, Ken, and Taylor. But Jay goes out, and then it comes down, it's going to be Taylor or Ken. We got that weird moment where Taylor was whistling to himself while he tries to recover, which is fine. I mean, it's not that strange, but it was just a little bit like surprising, I guess.
Yeah.
Just odd. But yeah. But alas, Ken wins. It's kind of I'm not really on Taylor or Jay's side, but it is certainly one of those situations where the entire fate of the game, it was, you could say that it kind of came down to that, meaning Jay has his idol, and if Taylor had won immunity, like maybe everyone would have just switched to Will, you know, like it split the votes between Jay and Will. But at that point, the idea that maybe Jay could play his idol and mess something up starts being something more possible. You know what I mean? Like it changes the lay of the land a little bit. I guess maybe it's not. There's just too many numbers now that I think about it, so maybe it's not that big a deal.
It's probably not that big a deal, but I think Taylor was such an easy target that it was hard to get anyone to, you know, we saw some people entertaining the idea of when they make a move, but when it's like, you don't want to make a move and have Taylor be part of your move, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's just easier.
He's not a good ally.
Yeah. Like, had you been working with Jay or Will, now maybe those kind of things start to bubble up a little bit hotter, you know? But at the same time, I'm not, while granted it wasn't, like you said, the most dynamic, interesting episode, I had enough of Taylor. Like, I just, it was interesting enough, but it was kind of annoying.
Yeah.
Like, I want to see, like, now let's see what Jay can do now that he's sort of untethered, you know? And I had wished that Taylor had been the one that they had just gotten rid of last time, so we could have seen the same with Michelle, but,
yeah,
you know.
Certainly, though, if it was going to be Jay or Taylor to go, I'd much rather see Taylor go. Jay is actually kind of playing the game in an intelligent way, more or less. Certainly by comparison.
Yeah, he's miscalculated a few things, but he's not. poorly playing by any means.
Right.
You know.
So as we come back from the immunity challenge, the majority pretty much says, look, we got a whole bunch of us all agreed that we need to get rid of Taylor and Jay. So let's just split the votes because we have plenty. You know, it's not even close. You know, we can easily split 5 and 6. So, you know, and then they have 3. You know, so, or actually, I'm not sure what the total is. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So Taylor ended up getting 6 votes. So it was 4-6 was the ultimate split, and then 1 vote for Adam. I don't know if they read that. Well, anyway, I don't want to do math right now. But the point is, though, that they didn't. This was not a risky split. Is my point. There are definitely times where they're doing a split where it really feels like if just one person doesn't do what they're supposed to do, then the whole thing falls apart. Whereas here it seemed like, no, that's not how it's going. And in fact, actually, I think in hindsight, Will might have felt safer because he may have at that point already kind of gone over to the other side of saying, yeah, I'm with you guys. It's going to be one of them.
Yeah, that's true.
That seems likely to me. Because he wasn't really involved in any of the rest of those conversations other than just general complaining about Adam. But so we have Sunday kind of mentioning to Brett, she's doing some of the work trying to get a sense of, like, is there any other appetite to get rid of Jessica? And Brett's kind of non-committal. You know, there's sort of a like, oh, well, maybe, but not this time. And so this is where she kind of has to call it, and like, it gets the impression that like, if her closest ally is not that jazzed on her plan, then maybe it's just not a good plan.
Yeah. And I was just looking, Will did vote for Jay, so he was like clearly in with what they were doing, like definitively.
Yeah.
So.
I think that makes the most sense based on how we just didn't see him involved with any of the strategizing after that. Yeah. I think that must mean that everybody was pretty confident that they had his vote, making the split an even easier decision to make.
Yeah, it was 7-4-1. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say I didn't think they read all the votes.
Right. So Jay was one of the Taylor votes. So they actually split it 6-4. It looks like.
Yeah, it may have been that all the arguing about stuff may have gotten someone's, or you know, maybe they had a preference for it to be Taylor anyway.
Yeah.
So they wanted to try to nudge it in that direction, or it may be that someone who was going to vote Jay. Oh well, you know what? They also probably just didn't want it to be a tie. So instead of doing 5-5. And then having to do a tiebreaker vote, they just say, we'll just do 6-4.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense. So in any case, though, we get, you know, Sunday breaks the news to Jay and Taylor saying, look, sorry, I would have been happy to work with you, but I just can't make it happen. So Jay now is in this position where he's thinking, okay, I've got my idol. I can either play it for myself, I can play it for Taylor, or I don't play it and just, you know, take that risk. You know, and that's in fact how it goes. And we also see that there may have been a nudge in his direction to convince Taylor that maybe they could still have a chance of getting out Adam, so that Taylor would vote for Adam while he himself votes for Taylor, and trying to encourage it to go that way, so he doesn't have to play his idol. That's probably pretty smart, if that's
Yeah.
in fact what he did. And also, at the where he's at right now, I don't even, I certainly don't blame him for eating the food. You know what I mean? It's like he's already on the outs. I don't know that this accusation of him eating some more of this food is necessarily going to make the difference for anybody.
Talking about Taylor or Jay?
Jay.
Oh, yeah, no, I think it was more just Adam trying to say, like, look, you don't come just after me.
Right.
I don't think anybody cares that Jay ate the food. They weren't, like, shocked that he joined Taylor, his ally, to eat the food.
Right. But yeah, so I think Taylor sharing all of that food and them finishing it together, and then Jay not telling Taylor he had his idol, that was where it kind of tipped for me. That's like, yeah, okay, Jay is he's cutting Taylor loose here. It doesn't, he's still reliant on everybody else's votes to make that happen that way, because they could still decide that he's the bigger threat, and they would be right to do so. But at that point, I think Taylor sharing the food and then Jay not telling about the idol, that's where it's not an even partnership anymore.
Right.
And so Taylor also tells Jay about the advantage, and then they kind of work themselves up that that's a much bigger deal than I think it actually is, as we've already talked about. So, and this is actually where I was kind of thinking to myself that, like, Adam agreeing to not tell anybody about the hidden food is actually a much bigger deal than having the advantage. So that's honestly, I was pretty impressed with that element of Taylor's story to begin with, which was to claim that Adam actually helped him do it, which is a little bit true.
Yeah, it's not as far as of a stretch as Adam made it sound.
Yeah. Well, especially because Adam's got to be in the boat of saying, or everyone's got to be thinking to him, like, you can't at the same time make the argument that this is a big deal for him to do it and for you to have sat there and watching him do it and not say anything to anybody else. You clearly thought that keeping your advantage secret was enough of a big deal that you didn't tell anybody. And we remember that, like, it's not like Taylor found him out. He volunteered that information.
Right.
So, so in any case, we have the whole conversation in the tribal council, which ultimately seems like it really doesn't matter. There's just kind of a lot of he said, three-way arguments of who did what that was worse. But none of it seems like it really had any lasting impact, except I think just for Adam continuing to make himself look worse and worse when he tries to defend himself. Not that it's enough to turn the votes, but he certainly doesn't help his own case with anything that he says, pretty much.
Correct.
Yeah. So, and at the, my last note here is just that that Jay, kind of towards the end, finally tries to directly throw Taylor under the bus by saying he doesn't think that stealing and hiding the food was okay. And he tries to put that on Taylor and Adam, and that's where it's like all the more clear that it's like, okay, he's now trying to have it be Taylor to get voted out. If it was Adam, that would be okay too, but he's saving himself and not Taylor at that point.
Yep.
And so then Taylor gets voted out, and he walks out saying, "Good luck, guys. Sorry for stealing food." I just wanted to slap him. Like, what?
Yeah, that's not.
Are you sorry? I'm not sure you are, for one. And also, if you were, maybe you could have said that before they voted you out.
I think he was being sarcastic.
Yeah, it could be, but that's dumb sarcasm too. Then, because it's like, because everyone's just going to say, "Yeah, you absolutely should be," because it's not okay. So that you are sarcastically apologizing is it is just more of the same.
Yep.
Anyway, glad he's gone, especially with the whole his final words, him being proud of himself for being all sneaky stealing food. And in his lasting memories are that he made a good friend, Jay, whose name is Jay, as though we wouldn't know who he's talking about. And then he got a girlfriend. Hopefully they're going to buy a sailboat.
That is not what happens.
I know, especially given what you mentioned previously, that he's got a kid on the way, not with her, not with Figgy, that is. So...
Yeah.
You can't help but... boy, he is a piece of work. Yeah, not impressed with him. Like there's plenty of people who come on Survivor where I feel like I'm sure this is a perfectly nice person. They're just not a good Survivor player. I'm not sure Taylor's a very nice person. He's kind of dumb for one, but also he just really doesn't seem to care about anybody else.
No.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know him in his personal life, but he's certainly shown no evidence of empathy on the show. But next time, the Gen Xers, having now eliminated, kind of broken the back of their competition, are they fracturing? Do we have Will and Zeke making some sort of an arrangement? And then kind of a fun little sequence of everybody telling each other about Jay's idol.
Yes.
I can't help but wonder, like at a certain point, though, when you're in a position like Jay is in right now, I feel like that's almost where you just go ahead and break out the idol, right? Like, just kind of say, "Yep, I got it. Just try voting for me."
Yes. It gets to a point at some point, where you have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I mean, and so that's where you kind of force it on everybody to say, okay, you're going to have to pick somebody else this time. And so while he watches that chaos happening, he can kind of slide around and start saying, trying to figure out who it might be and try to, whisper in their ear and say, might be you this time. Maybe what you should actually do is work with me.
Yeah. Or if you split that way, you clearly are going to be on the bottom of that. Mm-hmm. Maybe we should do something different. Yeah.
Right. Because the alternative is that he could still keep the idol a secret, wait for them to try to vote for him, and then play it and have it not go that way. But I feel like that loses the opportunity to fracture the opposition in the way that it would if they have a couple of days worth of knowing they won't be able to vote him out. Plus, it's also still possible that if he actually wins the next immunity challenge, which is another thing that could happen, then he doesn't even have to play it, and he's still around. So that I feel like that wouldn't necessarily be a bad strategy for him where he's at right now, because he's basically got no real allies. No one willing to stick their neck out for him anyway.
Oh.
But we'll see. So I guess that's it then for this episode. We're back kind of on our more regular schedule. Have we established if there's a new episode next week?
There is
Sometime.
an episode airing. I believe it
Okay.
is new.
All right. Well, so probably is a new episode next week. Of course, Thanksgiving weekend. We'll have to figure out what our schedule might be, but I believe that they are having a new episode. So we'll be back.
We will be back then.
All right. So thanks for listening and or watching, everybody, and watch Good Survivor. All right.